The last couple of bricks are removed and the light finally shines into the basement of an abandoned factory. Inside, there is a man sitting at a table smoking a cigarette. At first, he might seem like a victim of a horrific death sentence, walled in and left to die of suffocation, thirst, or hunger. He claims that he was there for quite some time, remaining calm and happy as he speaks. One look around the room reveals that there is something wrong. At a first glance, it might seem just like a gut feeling. There is nothing unusual about the basement. It's not what is there, it's what isn't. There are no bottles, no cans, no signs that anything was eaten at all. Only an ashtray full of cigarette butts. The man is neither thirsty nor hungry. Fear and regret sets in. Maybe the knocking on the wall wasn't supposed to be answered, because whoever or whatever was freed is not human. Such is the beginning of the Serbian movie Hepriјatељ, which translates to The Enemy. It's something between an art film and a horror, but most notably, it's a tragedy. For as long as I can remember, I have been frustrated with Slovak cinema. I always wanted our movies to be as great as our music and books. But almost every movie turns out to be a disappointment. It seems that what we excel at is tragedy and comedy. The Russians can pull off something really cool once in a while, but mostly we seem to be stuck in these two genres. It wasn't always this way. We were capable of creating epics. Most of them don't hold up by modern standards, but some are still absolutely watchable. It occurred to me that maybe this lack of grandeur in today's cinema is reflecting our recent history. The pan-Slavic ideal of the 19th century is gone, and so is the new socialist man of the 20th century. So who exactly is supposed to be the protagonist of our movie? The most obvious answer is the everyday man or woman. And that is how you make a comedy. The rest of the world can't replicate Eastern European comedy, because the rest of the world doesn't have as many gypsies. Sadly, when life isn't a comedy, it tends to be a tragedy. And we have a lot of those too. Since the 90s there have been wars in Bosnia, Macedonia, Donbass, Croatia, Slovenia, Pridnjestrovje and others. It's very easy to say the usual war is bad and nationalism is dangerous. It's true, but in most cases those words are meaningless, especially when they come out of the mouths of politicians who are more than happy to fund and fight said wars. You can absolutely make the soldier into a hero of your movie and the enemy combatant into a bloodthirsty villain. But for me personally, this doesn't work. I've been to a good part of Eastern Europe, and I think that all of us are pretty fucking similar. The denial of this similarity is perhaps one of our most uniting traits. It doesn't matter if it's a man from Prague bending over for a German tourist to prove he is Central European, or a Macedonian giving another 10% of his wage to build a statue of Alexander the Great. But this nationalist brain rot is mostly harmless. Who cares if Prague and Skopje are turned into Disney parks? It's kind of funny actually. It would be stupid to blame only nationalism for the wars that engulfed our region, but it definitely is a part of it. And it's the main tool to dehumanize whoever happens to be living across the border. Hepriјatељ proves that maybe our current cinema shouldn't try to make epics. Instead, when making movies about war, we should lean even deeper into what we're already good at: tragedy. The movie is about a small unit of Serbian soldiers. The Bosnian War is over, the Dayton Agreement has been signed. If you don't know any of the context, the war ended in a sort of a compromise. The modern country of Bosnia and Herzegovina was created. An extremely complicated federal state serving as home to Bosniaks, Croats and Serbs. Even though the conflict ended, some unfortunate servicemen can't go home yet. They are left behind to clear out the mines that they themselves planted during the war. One of the characters says that dying of your own mine after the war is over is a tragicomedy, and that encapsulates it quite well. Their operation is overseen by a bunch of Americans of the Implementation Force, which was supposed to be a peacekeeping mission. As their shift ends and the Americans leave, we get to see where the Serbs live. A ruin of what once was someone's home, surrounded by minefields on all sides. The entire movie has a post-apocalyptic feel to it. It's dreamy and distant, but at the same time completely believable. The two main characters are Chucky and the lieutenant. Chucky is a guy from Belgrade who paused his studies to go fight. The lieutenant is a man from the countryside. Chucky is good looking and has a girlfriend waiting for him at home. No one is really waiting for the lieutenant. They represent the good Serbs. Normal people that ended up in a terrible situation but still maintained their humanity. Another guy from the unit comes back from a mission to check whether a nearby factory is safe. He brings with him a civilian. It's the entity I told you about at the beginning of the video, but for now he presents himself as simply Daba. We will get to what Daba means eventually. When asked about who walled him in the basement, he simply says that it was the enemy. The Serbs quickly assume that by the enemy, he means the Bosniaks. When asked why did they do such a terrible thing to him, he answers that they were afraid of him. More specifically, that they were afraid to kill him. Everyone sort of starts assuming that he has a couple screws loose. At the end of the day, most of them aren't in their best mental state either. The above-mentioned two main characters, Chucky and the lieutenant, have each other's company. Not in that way, you weirdo. Serbs aren't tempted by sin, unlike lesser nations. They don't hang out much with the others because they don't like the company of Guzica. Guzica means ass, a nickname he got because he is not exactly a nice person. He is, in fact, a war criminal. Guzica is not enthusiastic about leaving the war behind because it most likely means facing a trial. He hangs out with Lik and the cook. Two characters that represent a more simpleton kind of Serb. The three cause trouble to the lieutenant, such as breaking into the American outpost. Then there is Vesko. Vesko represents the religious Serb. He feels that there is something wrong with the guy they found in the basement. Last but not least, there is Sivi. Sivi was a sniper, an especially traumatizing profession, one in which you kill others while they're brushing their teeth or eating lunch. Sivi keeps to himself. He doesn't talk to anyone except Daba. At the end of the day, he was the one who found him and who answered the knocking on the wall. In the night, the two have a conversation and in the morning, Sivi is gone. A search party is quickly organized. Vesko, the religious older gentleman, wants to go as well. He can't bear to be in the presence of that mysterious man alone, and asks the lieutenant to instead leave him with Guzica, the war criminal. They make the short journey to the factory where they found Daba. Here, the lieutenant notices the lack of food in the basement. Vesko notes that Daba was waiting for them. They make another unpleasant discovery: a mass grave. Bosniaks and Serbs, dumped into a hole, left to rot. The stench is almost as terrible as the squad toilets in the Belgrade bus station. Chucky goes down to examine the bodies, and at that moment, they get ambushed by two gunmen. One of them is a Bosniak, the other one is a Serb. They know that the war is over, but this is no longer about that. The Bosniak asks them about the man in the basement, but before they can have a proper talk, Chucky emerges from the staircase and shoots him. They let his Serbian accomplice get away because he is theirs, not an enemy. From that point onward, they are followed by a distant figure on the horizon. It might be the guy from the factory, it might be Sivi, or someone else. They treat the wounded Bosniak, and upon waking up, he's horrified to be in the same room as Daba. He calls the entity Shaitan. The God-fearing Vesko agrees with the Muslim. It's a demon, and whatever he told Sivi before the boy disappeared was pure evil. The next day they finally find out who is the figure on the horizon. It's neither Sivi nor the guy from the factory. It's a woman. Her family was originally living in the house that is now occupied by the unit. Her father stayed to fight, but no one knows where he ended up. Even worse, the radio stops working. At this point, no one is looking for Sivi anymore. All the guys just want to go home. Why listen to the lieutenant when the war is over? The girl decides to leave and go look for her dad, but it's not a smart move. Immediately, she steps on a mine and is only saved by a dangerous stunt from Chucky and the lieutenant. It takes another member of the squad getting injured by a mine for them to realize that these weren't planted by them. Someone installed new mines during the night. Even worse, it had to be someone from inside the house, as they were taken from their own stash. It's time for a good old-fashioned interrogation. Chucky isn't able to get anything out of Daba. He even forces him to undress, but it's obvious that normal techniques won't work. His body is covered by scars, which are supposedly the result of beatings he received in a mental hospital. He says that he was held there because they were trying to find a cure. Not for him, but for themselves. A cure against fear. Once again, his ramblings are dismissed as those of a madman, and the second suspect is brought over. The Bosniak tells a story about how they held the factory and the man appeared out of nowhere. He lit up a cigarette and started cursing God. They wanted to shoot him, but before they could go through with it, the Serbs attacked. Bosniaks held their ground, but after the Serbian advances were repelled, they had a fight amongst themselves. The entire unit ended up killing each other, until only one was left. The Serbs came to take over the factory, and after encountering Daba, the same situation repeated. In the end, there was one Bosniak and one Serb, both left with no choice but to throw away their differences and seal the entity in the basement. Chucky has had enough and wants to execute whatever that thing is. The Bosniak stops him. He says that if it is killed, the entire world will disappear, that he was the first, the creator of the universe. If you kill him, you kill yourself, that your hand is his hand. Anyway, Chucky comes to a conclusion. If Daba really is God and this is his creation, then coincidences can do him no harm. Daba replies with a simple, "I am who I am, there are no coincidences." Chucky puts a single bullet into his revolver, aiming at the entity. He pulls the trigger 4 times, but the bullet doesn't come out. Luck? Maybe. But more and more of the crew starts believing that their guest is something more. There is a scene in which the unit sits at a table and discusses the nature of their guest. Chucky is reminded of the Demiurge, a philosophical/theological being that dreamt the universe into existence. But perhaps out of fear, he denies that something like that is possible. He accuses Daba of being a solipsist, someone who thinks that everyone else is a product of their mind, and nothing outside of the mind can be proven to exist. But the rational explanations are long overdue. Another mine explodes outside. The team rushes to examine the source. It's the guy from the factory. He is dragging himself towards the building. They try to treat him, but it's too late. The Bosniak curses them for what they have done. In his eyes, the slaughter is starting again. All fingers are pointed at the guest, and the God-fearing Vesco now also points a gun. He accuses Daba of being the devil, using lies to drive them apart. Daba tells him to call him whatever he wants, except a liar. He doesn't lie. The lieutenant saves their guest from being killed, and another sleepless night passes by. The radio still isn't working. The outside world is but a memory. The next day, Vesco tries to kill Daba again, but as with every attempt in the movie so far, he just isn't capable of pulling the trigger. He wants to exorcise him with a prayer. Instead, he gets shot. Civi, the sniper who disappeared at the beginning, is back, and he's trying to eliminate everyone. The lieutenant manages to come on top in the upcoming gunfight. Civi is not interested in surrendering, and goes out with a smile. Everyone starts turning on each other. Everyone thinks that the others are under a spell of whoever their guest is, except the lieutenant and the war criminal. Both have fallen under a different spell. Not seeing a woman in months made them both take interest in the newcomer. The lieutenant chose to be her guardian, while the war criminal has more sinister plans. He attempts to take her against her will, before the lieutenant intervenes. But the night is far from over. Lick, the guy who got injured by a mine a couple days ago, locked himself in the American outpost. He spent his days thinking about life and decided to adopt a new, rare aesthetic. Rocky Vulovic. He has a plan. First up, kill the Bosniak. Reason, non/religious hatred. Second, get out with their guest, leading the way. The mines that have been planted are surely his doing as well, so if he goes first, no one will get hurt. Well, since he killed a Bosniak for no reason, it's not technically true that his plan doesn't involve anyone getting hurt. But what can I say, he's living up to the stereotype. The cook, his best friend, puts a stop to it with a knife into Lick's back. In the end, the Bosniak was right. They will all start killing each other. Chucky and the lieutenant finally make contact with the headquarters. But on the other side, the only sounds are those of gunshots and screaming. Chucky determines that the only thing he can do is go to a hill nearby and try to catch a clearer connection. He admits he's afraid, and the reason he came to fight in the war was to conquer his own fear. But never was he as afraid as now, with their guest living among them. The two say their goodbyes in a distinctly Slavic fashion.
Chucky.
Šta je?
Imaš cigar?
Now it's just the lieutenant, the girl, the war criminal, and the cook, who took on the role of the entity's protector. He fears that someone is going to kill their guest. He is convinced that if Daba dies, the whole world will die too, including the cook's family. In a desperate attempt to prevent that, he tries to kill everyone. But his aim is terrible, and instead of hitting a person, he hits a lantern, which sets the house on fire. They end up wrestling with the lieutenant, who is unfortunately unable to escape a front choke. A bit embarrassing, but luckily the girl is there to save him. The house burns down, and the crew is reduced to 2 men, 1 woman, and 1 godlike being. Finally, we get a confirmation that their guest really isn't just a lunatic. When the last 2 remaining men fight over whether they should escape through the minefield, Daba assures them that they will be safe. He finishes his sentence and an explosion is heard. A herd of sheep appeared out of nowhere in front of the burned down house. This is their path to safety. A miracle. The lieutenant chases them through the road, and the animals activate whatever mines were planted, exploding into piles of wool and meat along the way. Once they're almost at the hill, the war criminal offers to lead the way, but he leads the small group into even more mines. The lieutenant notices and connects the dots. The one who planted the mines wasn't Civi. It was Guzica. The 2 remaining soldiers fight, while the entity and the woman watch from close by. None of the 2 try to help the lieutenant, but he prevails nonetheless. They climb on top of the hill and find Chucky dying after a severe mine injury. He is leaning against the remains of a fence which creates a cross. A storm thunders in the distance, and the sky turns grey. Chucky says he is no longer afraid. He pulls the trigger, gun at his head. Nothing happens. He wants the lieutenant to try as well, but then changes his mind. The next one, according to his words, is intended for the devil. He shoots and kills the woman. Looks like Chucky was spending way too much time on the internet recently. The lieutenant threatens to kill Daba, saying that if he really is God, then he has to bring her back. And he does. She's back to being alive, as if the bullet just flew past her. He insists on locking their guest back into the basement. She tells him that she won't go with him, and gives him a black flower. Everyone has a choice, and sees whatever they want to see. For her, the figure standing next to them is no one. They split up, and the lieutenant brings the entity back into the factory. It asks him whether he's really content with never learning what it is. He replies that it doesn't matter. For the 2 of them, the war is over. He barricades the hole into the basement with a door, using his own body to lock it. As the audience is presented with the final shots of the abandoned factory, we see his lifeless frozen body still holding the door. So what was the thing they found in the basement? Most likely, both the dedicated Christian and the Muslim don't identify him correctly. He is not Shaitan or Satan. He doesn't seem to be envious of humans. He is not prideful in his behavior. He doesn't put himself above the members of the unit. Does he represent war? Did they uncover the source of conflict? This was my interpretation when I first watched this movie. I'll give you a summary, but it's no longer my favorite version of looking at things. Today I think that Daba represents more than just war. The various soldiers are a near perfect cut across Serb society, and also a good selection of ways how people can cope with trauma from war. For some of them, the war never ended. Others turn to God, and some just seek to forget about it once and for all. Most importantly, at the start, they are one unit, though there are cracks hiding underneath. In a similar sense, Yugoslavia was one country, even though nationalism always threatened to break it apart. Both this unit and Yugoslavia in the 90s dug out a source of conflict that was buried. But I have a problem with this allegory. Yes, in this movie, the Bosniak and the Serb throw away their differences to seal the entity and therefore also the bloodshed in the basement. Which I guess is supposed to symbolize how the sovereign Slavs buried the brutalities of World War II when building socialist Yugoslavia. And if you smirked at that sentence, you're right. Because that's not how it is. The crimes of the collaborators, especially the Ustaše, were not buried in a basement. They were put on public display, with a sign that reads, "This is the result of disunity and fascism." The way I see the movie these days is actually a lot more simple in the fact that Chucky really was onto something. Out of all the concepts we went over, Daba is the closest to a demiurge. I think that the movie actually makes it quite clear. The demiurge in philosophy and theology is the creator of a flawed universe. There are different views on the nature of his creation. For some it's a mistake, a prison. For others it's something divine that isn't perfect but made with the best intentions in mind. Daba explains this to the girl in one scene. She's looking at her childhood paintings. They aren't very good. Daba says that's just how things are. You have an ideal image in your head of what you want to create, but you fail to translate that image onto paper, and the result is something ugly that doesn't match your ideal. The soldiers give him various names because they struggle to comprehend what he is. The name he introduces himself with, Daba. At some point, maybe when he revealed himself to the ancient ancestors of these soldiers, back before Slavs accepted Christianity or Islam, maybe that's how they called him. Daba is very close to Dabok, and that was one of the chief gods of the Slavic pagan pantheon. The entity seems to be completely uninterested in what name they choose for him. The only time he shows interest is when the crew tries to figure out the nature of his origin, such as when Chucky talks about the demiurge. When the lieutenant says that it doesn't matter who the entity replies that he's correct. Instead, he should question his own origin. And his own origin is at the hand of the demiurge. The woman is the strangest character in the movie. She comes looking for her father. At the end of the movie, she is no longer interested in finding him. While it might seem like her goals got swept under the rug, the truth is she found her quote-unquote father, her creator, Daba, the demiurge. During the final fight, the woman doesn't intervene, even though her life depends on the lieutenant's victory. She looks at the demiurge's creation in the same way he does. No matter what happens, there will always be more violence. It's just his creation playing out. In the scene where Chucky shoots at the devil, the bullet gets redirected towards the woman. I think that the reason why she gets revived isn't because the demiurge has a gun to his head, but because he appreciates her specifically. Daba only shows sympathy towards humans when they try to figure out what he is, and the woman is the only one who manages to understand him. She says that she doesn't see the figure anymore. He is no one. The way I see it, this signals that the violence inflicted throughout the movie was the work of those who actually engage in said violence. It's convenient to put all the blame on some random source of evil and call it Daba, but that's just not how it is. The lieutenant, on the other hand, can't understand. He is given a black flower because he is already marked for death. And again, his death is not at the hand of the demiurge, it's his own doing. The only way the war can end for him is by his life ending as well. It's that sort of movie that entices you to rewatch. I like seeing different things in the same art piece as time goes on. The saying, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade, holds true. In the Eastern European context, when life gives you war, make tragedies. And in the Serbian context, if NATO gives you a brutal bombing campaign, make srpski film.